We're right now. Okay, right, I'll start again. We'd like to open the Play, Recreation and Sport Committee meeting for the 17th of June. We're just going to change around the agenda slightly, just so that it all makes a little bit more sense. We're actually going to open up with the presentation from Netball Manor 2, then the presentation from Combat Sports, and then we're going to have our public comment. The reason being so that the public comment comes in right before the Victoria Esplanade, because theirs is related to the Victoria Esplanade, and they are quite happy to do that. So it just makes more sense for the flow of the meeting to do that. So we will start with, but before I do that, can I just ask if there's any declarations of interest for this meeting? Okay, there's no declarations of interest. Okay, we will then go to our item number 5, which is our presentation from Netball Manor 2. We've got Chris and Sue here. Yep, Deb, and you've got 10 minutes in your presentation, and there is a traffic light system. Have you got that going there? Traffic light? It is you've got 10 minutes, it's 7 minutes with green, and then another further 2, and then the last flashing light will be on the red. So we're just waiting for
testing
people to do something. I think they've got a presentation on the screen, everyone. Right, we're ready when you are.
Okay, yeah, leave it there, that's perfect. Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Good afternoon, councillors, staff and general public. Great to be here today. I'm Chris Gunn, I'm the General Manager of Netball Manor 2, and this is Deb Kearney, our chairperson. I've been in the role for a couple of years myself, and Deb's been on the board and chairperson for almost 7 years. So our pleasure to be here to deliver to you today. I'm just going to hand over to Deb, who's going to open for us.
Good afternoon. Just a little bit about Netball Manor 2. Last year we celebrated our 90th birthday as an association, and there's a lot of people still involved in netball that haven't been there for 90 years, but they've been there for a lot longer than myself. We've got a really good group of volunteers, although ageing. They're very good, and we go into the wider community a lot because of those older people, and they've got daughters, granddaughters, and now sometimes grandsons that are interested in netball. So we're very fortunate to have a really good group of people around us.
Thanks, Deb. And certainly coming into the organisation, you know, a couple of years ago, it's a lot to come to grips with, and understanding the full picture and all the pockets of people that all play an integral part in it. and certainly 2 years on, I'm almost there, getting there. But no, I certainly, I think it's a fantastic operation and organisation to be a part of, and it certainly has a big reach with, certainly 5,000 players, managers, and coaches involved in netball. We're one of the bigger RSOs, and certainly, and we appreciate our position and the opportunity that we're able to offer all our young people and older young ladies and men as well. We don't exclude anybody. We're certainly very inclusive, and that's been one of our primary focuses over in the organisation, strategically around ensuring that we are actually inclusive, certainly of gender, but ethnicity and disability, anybody. So we want to make sure that we've got a position or an opportunity or a spot for you. It's not just about the game of netball. It's a lot more than that. We take on a very holistic view in terms of what we can offer. So we are, I guess, focused on the social good. We want to ensure that people are able to develop themselves socially, motivationally, and their well-being. So that looks like a whole lot of different things. So netball itself, it can be very empowering, and people can talk very strongly about what netball's meant to them over the years, and so we try to ensure that everybody gets an opportunity to feel good about that.
Some other areas of New Zealand have seen, the diverse ethnicities as a bit of a challenge, but we like to think that we do that really well by reaching out to all ethnicities, and that's one of the key things that makes us inclusive, and we work on that all the time with every new group of people that come into Palmerston North.
Yeah, so to be able to do our job well, we've got to be able to work well with people, and so we've got a number of key partners and stakeholders that we certainly try and ensure that we're doing our part of our relationships for the greater picture. And one of those key partners for us is certainly council. And additionally, Sport Manawatu. And Sport Manawatu, we've got a very good relationship with Trevor and the team down there, and we're tenants in Sports House, and we're 100% waving the flag for that concept. We're right in behind it because we get a lot of benefit from it, certainly in terms of how we're able to position ourselves as office staff, but certainly the resource that they've got and people, and obviously the various funds that we're able to tap into with good knowledge and good awareness of what they are, such as the Active Communities Fund and whatever else. So certainly our relationship with Trevor and the team is a major part of our effectiveness in our community. But coupled with that, obviously, we have a number of relationships with various sponsors, with businesses and organisations in the city that we're really proud of. And we work in well to ensure that there's benefits for both parties, and that we're very communicative, and that they, I guess, we're very transparent about how we operate, and we want to make sure that it is mutually benefit, because it is a partnership. It's not just a sponsorship to us. It's about working with them for the benefit of our people in our city. So we believe that we do that pretty well. Coupled with that is NZCT, obviously, and other funders are pretty important to us. And I say NZCT because a couple of our salaries are funded by them on a year-by-year basis. And as you know, obviously funders haven't been taking applications over the COVID period, and the timing of that wasn't too flash for us, because that's when we would be renewing our 2 roles. So as far as that goes, it's presented some real challenges for us. We've been, I guess, an effective organisation in being able to manage ourselves with good governance, thanks Deb and team, and we've got some reserves that we've had to use through this COVID period, obviously, but the funding part is a big one for us, and we believe that we've got real value in our structure, and we're able to deliver on our outcomes. So we need to get this bit right for us. And at the moment, it's still a little bit up in the air, although positively, as you'd be aware, NZCT opened back up last week for applications. So we'll be working to get ours looked at and hopefully funded in the near future.
Being 5,000 women involved in the sport, we find it good for the community, and something that we take from the community a lot, as most codes do. We're always asking the community for something, but we give back to Women's Refuge. We run a couple of days a year where we have everybody turning up at Vordia Park, asking them to bring something in so we can pass it on to Women's Refuge, and that's one of our main organisations that we support.
Yeah, dead right, and we're pretty proud of that relationship. Coupled with that, we're also pretty dynamic. We do look for opportunities and gaps, where there is a need, and we look to see what we can do to play our part in getting the situation better for people. So there's a lot of successes, a lot of great things happening. We're a very effective centre, aren't we, Deb, across the country, and recognised as such. We have We have a lot of players coming out of this area. We have a lot of coaches, you know, obviously Vet and Mickelson Jury and a number of others, John Atkins and Renee Matui, a whole heap of them. Yeah, we've got 2 international umpires. We've got Andrew Armstrong-Lush and Ken Metakingi, and that's super significant, you know, when there's only 30 across the world, you know, and we've got 2 in our region here. So that's certainly another thing to wave the flag about. The and I guess part of our, when we move now on to the challenges, thinking about that, there's a few things that do hamper us, of course, funding, and, you know, you'll hear that all afternoon today, but certainly also, you know, I guess it's just being able to, I guess just before I get onto that, I'll talk about facilities. We struggle with our availability of courts, you know, and again, messaging that you'll hear a bit. Arena's a fantastic complex. We're very lucky to have our own home ground at Vortier Park with 17 outdoor courts, which is amazing, you know, very lucky, and certainly the envy of a lot of regions in regard to that. But to not have indoor space is a big one for us, and that's limiting the play that we're able to offer for our teams and for our young people, and certainly in the senior women and men as well. So a way to be able to progress that, of course, you know, aspirationally, yes, we'd love a covered facility at Vortier Park, and, you know, we've been there before around that, certainly with council and others in the past, and we'll revisit that, you know, every year, because it's a big one for us. But we're not fixed on that. We just want more space to be able to play with our kids and those older girls and boys. And so potentially, if there's a model that can work better with other sports, you know, could there be something done, you know, at a new sports hub or at the arena? Can we somehow look at something that could happen there, or whether it's a relationship with hockey and cricket down at the turf there? I know that they're looking at doing something together around sort of being able to share a premises and where the courts can be erected there, or whether it's on the corner of Ongley and Fitzherbert. Done a lot of thinking about all of this. On the corner of Park Road rather, and Fitzherbert, you know, with that corner site there, obviously that's being looked at for purposes, you know, whether something can be done there with tennis and girls high and ourselves, I don't know, but all I'm saying is we're certainly open to anything. A lot of this is aspirational, certainly, but to be able to make it actually a reality would have a major impact on our sport and on our numbers and on certainly people's, I guess, holistic well-being.
Yeah, just reiterating what Chris said, sometimes the facilities that we can offer can limit what we bring to Palmerston North. As we've said, we're really well respected as a centre by Netball New Zealand, and the better we have, the more we can bring to Palmerston North and our economy and everything else, because they're keen to have us operating for them for a lot of tournaments and venues. Yeah.
Did right, and those higher grades require indoor facilities, and that's our stumbling block often. Well, I know we're getting close to the end of the time here, so I'll just quickly talk about, you know, we fight for our players, and I bring that up because our affiliation to the zone, Netball Central Zone, and to Netball New Zealand is important to us, and we believe in an effective structure that works well for all our players, all those grassroots players, and I'm talking about not those front courts 1 to 6, we want to look after them too, but particularly those on court 16, 17, playing on the asphalt way up the back, you know, standing there with no shelter over them or anything like that. You know, we want to do right by them also. And so we do make sure that this year Netball New Zealand isn't charging an affiliation, which is fantastic. Netball Central, there is an affiliation. We're just working with them just to negotiate, just to make sure we get the best deal for our players, because we want them all out playing. We don't want there to be any barriers. All right, that's pretty much time, I think, is it there? Yeah. So thank you very much for listening to us. I think hopefully the message has come across from us that we're all about the user, and we want to make sure that we get the situation right for them always. So we'll always be raising the flag in regard to that. So thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you. Thanks very much for coming in. We've got a couple of questions. Just one from me. Have you talked to any other codes about sharing facilities? You've got a facility there that does house netball already. Yeah. Have you talked to other codes about sharing your own facility? Yeah,
very good question, Leonie. Thank you. So yeah, 100%. We and I guess, you know, we've been working with Sport Manawatu and Trevor around the sports hub, you know, and that's we've got a great facility. I'd love to have all the sports up there. We can certainly make it work 100%. But at the moment, you know, we're fully behind Sport Manawatu and that concept of the sports hub. You know, certainly you guys, Palmerston North Council and them and other key partners, we're moving in a direction. We're very keen to work with Sport Manawatu on what that can look like. We see real benefit in being a part of that Sport Manawatu makeup. As an RST, we believe that they offer a lot to all the RSOs. coupled with that, certainly we've got very good relationships with cricket and hockey and football. And at the moment, for example, you might have seen some media around post-COVID, we're coming together for First Step just being a holiday program, but it's a 5-code holiday program. It's an outdoor 5-code holiday program. We're doing it together. Sport Manawatu's on board leading it there with us. So kids are coming along for 3 days in each first and second week. It's kids of all ages. We've got coaches there. We've got all sorts happening. But the key part to all of this is one of the first key cross-code initiatives that's playing out within our city. And this is just the start. You'll note that the banner on that media is something like Manawatu Sports, and underneath it talks about the holiday program. But I guess the plan is for us to release a whole heap in regard to what we can offer as a cross-code initiative. So whether that's umpire workshops, whether that's parent workshops around sort of balances better and all of that, it's working together. And certainly facilities come into play there. But as I said, yeah, we're sort of sitting there with Sport Manawatu and just following their lead on what that can look like. But we're certainly open to anything, Leonie. So thank you. Good question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chris and Deb. 2 questions. I could see 23 sponsors on one of your slides, and apparently all of them are paying equally because all the signs are equal. Yeah, yeah. Will it be appropriate to ask you how much each of them is contributing? Yeah,
100%. And in reality, as you know, that does look differently in terms of what the exchange looks like. They're shown there evenly because that's sort of how we were all operating. We're operating under that same premise that certainly we're promoted in some ways in the same way, which is in this case plays out differently when we get out into the wider community. So you're asking about the level of what that looks like, you know, what some of the...
I mean, what kind of contribution there?
Yeah, so for example, we have naming rights sponsors for our big competitions. More Law is our premier competition. That's the top level girls, ladies. And so they pay an amount for that. Sitting under that, we have the Coffee Club, who are up at Vortia Park for the club competition, big competition, 90 teams involved in that one, massive. And that's Saturday afternoon. And so we have an arrangement with them for... We're talking for all of these sponsors. It's under the 10,000 amount. In fact, it's under the 5,000 amount for most of these sponsors. And in fact, we're not necessarily talking about a monetary amount either. We're talking about an exchange, whatever that looks like. For example, one of our sponsors, if I took, I don't know, CLM, we've got the leader on Freiburg there, Lyndon, fantastic individual, and he plays a part around our city in many ways. So he gives us use of pools and bits and pieces for our teams. Our clubs get half, discount rates and so on. So yeah, we look to tailor it so it's of benefit obviously to the both of us. So it's a real difference in what that picture looks like.
All right, thank you. Second question, good to know that we have 2 international umpires in the area. How many the national players do we have in the silver ferns at the moment from the region?
Yeah, how many players in the silver ferns at the moment? There's none at the moment, but the most recent was...
Oh, that's all right.
In Pulse, a couple of the Pulse players that have gone on to have come out of Palmerston North, which is same as rugby. We breed some really good players and then they get absorbed by the bigger centres.
So just before so obviously with the ANZ Premiership teams, or the Pulse, for example, sitting under that is the Beco team. So we've had 4 players in the Beco team last year, and they've gone on to, they would have gone on to things this year. A couple of them are in the fringe of the Pulse. So no Silver Ferns at the moment. We've got Yvette McCulson-Jury, who's obviously been a Silver Ferns assistant coach. He's pretty awesome. But yeah, there's a lot, same as rugby, that come out of this region and go on to Wellington or wherever.
Thank you.
Such as the market.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions from me, and also just to say I did hear your holiday programme advertised on More FM this morning. Very good chit chat about that there with the team on Morning Show. First question about the salaries funded through NZCT. You said obviously there have been challenges and that's not happened. Does that mean what is happening with those positions that are funded through NZCT? Are you just holding them or?
Yeah, so we 100% are fully behind our staff, and we want to keep those roles. We believe we're pretty effective, and we can always do better. Don't get me wrong, but we believe we've got a good model going forward. So we've got some reserves, as I said, and so we're able to carry those staff for hopefully until we can get the NZCT funding through.
And does the government, I can't remember what it's called, Sport Emergency Fund, is that something?
Yeah, right. So I guess like looking at the whole picture through COVID around finances is wage subsidy. So we got the first part, and we will be applying for the extension this week. We're up to renew that. There was also the Resilience Fund, which came out. You probably caught up on that, Sport NZ Resilience Fund, and that was administered through the RST, through Trevor and the team, and basically you're able to get your fixed costs over that 3-month period, and up to a maximum of 40,000 for RSOs, up to 1,000 for clubs. So basically, to give you an idea of what that meant to us, we got 13,500 for that. Of the possible 40,000 was all that we were able to get. Yes, we've seen that there's 245 million being released next as part of that sports support package over 4 years, and it's in sort of 3 phases. First phase was going all to all the professional teams, which I believe has been carried out. My understanding is that Sport NZ hasn't quite worked out how they're going to manage the rest of it, so we don't have any other detail on that at the moment. And the real difficulty for us is that support package is needed now. It's not needed, when they work out how to administer it in 6 months or 8 months later. Now it's like the priority, as you just said, we're in between funding streams, and so it's really difficult. This is the crunch time. We don't want people, we don't want to lose people, but we've only got so much money, and until we're able to navigate our way through it, it's pretty stressful at the moment.
No, thank you for
Can I
that.
just add to that? And fortunately, from a governance point of view, our staff did agree to take a cut in wages to try and see our way through before we knew what was happening, so that we could retain our staff, or we might have been forced into having to let somebody go. But at the moment, we're treading water and getting there.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Deb.
And my second question was just, I was just a bit confused about indoor spaces. So you talk about the arena.
Yeah.
Do you not use the arena? Why is the arena not an indoor space for you?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, we certainly use the arena. We use it for our Prem and our year 5 and 6. But it's just, when you hear from all codes, they'll all tell you that we're all vying for the same spaces, and there just isn't the availability of courts. Coupled with that, the difficulty with the arena being independent is that we get a community rate on those facilities, which is fantastic, and we're very thankful for that. But when a commercial event comes to town, we get bumped. And, just recently, in fact, we've set our calendar, finally got everything in place and lined everything up with the teams and fees. But then, we get the phone call that we've just lost a week in late July, I think it is. So, so while we can understand it, it certainly, causes a lot of disruption and difficulties for us in being able to, deliver.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thanks.
Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Talking about indoor space, several years ago, the Netball Manawatu came and reported to us at Council, and there was an idea that possibly Redpaths would be able to do something for you. Did you ever go to Redpaths and ask them? And if so, what was the outcome?
Must have been well prior to my involvement with the board. I know we did probably 5 or 6 years ago, before I was on the board, there was a feasibility study done by Netball New Zealand. They helped us do a feasibility study, and it ran into the millions, so it was put on the back burner.
Maybe a visit to Redpaths just to see what is possible could give us a good starting point.
I'm not sure what Redpaths is.
Greenhouses, is it?
Yeah,
I know that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, look, we're open to talking to anybody and looking at any options for it for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regards to your national sports tournaments, and I understand we've been in COVID, but typically on an annual year, for example, a secondary school event, is that something that we would have the capacity to host? I know we've done it in the past, and just understand, is there a rotation around the country for that type of thing to be bidded for? Or can I understand that space around national sports tournaments?
Yeah, good question, Paul. Thank you. So we've had a number of events within our centre, and most recently the national event we had was the under 17s, was a couple of years ago here, big event. What limits us is obviously for the likes of, well, the previous grade was under 19s, but it's just changed to under 18s national tournament now. But anyway, for that level, you need an indoor space. And so the complication is for our region is that because we always put up our hand, you know, to host these events, and we've actually got a very good record, like they do look favourably on our region. Given the way that we've been able to run them in the past, but certainly also geographically our where we sit, it does work out very well. And in other centres, you know, do look positively on coming to the Manawatu, but it's about the timing. And if the arena isn't available for us, or we can't get sort of the dates that fit for the wider group, Netball New Zealand, yeah, would not have it here. In the past, we've been lucky. We've got some extra pulse games. We've had finals here, as you know, for a couple of years, even in a row, and so that's fantastic. But that, you know, certainly one of those times was a fallout of Wellington not being able to provide. So they know that we can do it. It's just ensuring that the availability is there, and that's you know, that's that bigger part that I've been talking about already around the availability of the arena. I certainly think there is a need for certainly our grassroots, but 100%, as you say, for that higher performance level of players also. Yeah, you know, if we had that space, that venue, and we had some, I guess, some responsibilities around sort of how we can manage it for ourselves and those other users without that commercial sort of impact, rather, I think that we could do a lot more for our region around netball opportunity.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My question was around the indoor facilities. I think that's been covered by other councillors.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Chris, and thanks, Deb, for coming in and opportunity to just hear from you directly. It's really, really appreciated. I might have missed it on the way through, but you talked about numbers, and I heard sort of 5,000 participating locally. But what I was interested in is sort of how fast that's growing, or what the changes are over time.
Really good question. Thank you. So I was looking at this recently, actually, because our numbers have just been finalised for this season, and I'm super pleased to say that we've remained steady. We're pretty much the same as last year, which is really encouraging given, you know, the situation that we've just all been through. But looking back at the last 7 years, our numbers have always been pretty steady. You know, across our 7 grades, you know, maybe it's dipped 2 here, but we've picked up 2 here and whatever. Certainly there's been some good growth in the future ferns, which is sort of that year 5 and 6 down, year 1 to 6, which is really positive. But certainly all the numbers have remained in our sport. And I think, you know, traditionally, if we look at those traditional sports, you know, we have seen a decrease across a few, particularly rugby, I guess, but they can talk to that more so. But within netball, I believe we've stayed, we're looking at the data, we've stayed pretty steady, which is, yeah, super positive. And I think there's lots of reasons for that.
Great, thank you. And just to further understand that, so are we attracting players from, say, Woodville or Fielding or that come in and participate as well? Yeah, so we you know, while we want to grow our region, we want to grow our numbers, our participation numbers, we also, you know, we think it's important that we ensure that the local providers in those local areas are able to maintain their own competitions. And a good example of this at the moment is Netball Horowhenua, who's just folded for the year. They're unable to deliver a competition. And certainly we were wanting to support them to be able to deliver, you know, their own competition. We 100% will take their teams. If they've got players who want to come on up. But no, it was important for us to keep it down there and keep it localized and keep it direct to those users. So we were looking at how we could use some of our team to go down there to help support it. But it sort of fell apart anyway in the end, unfortunately. But they're looking at restarting for next year. So, but to answer your question, though, we do have players, yes, that come from the likes of Paiatua, or they come from Taiapi, or yes, certainly wider than the Manawatu. Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Chris and Deb. We do appreciate both of you coming in and giving us that information. It was really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll look to move this recommendation, seconded by Councillor Meehan. We'll look to vote on this just with the voice. I'll look to move it. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 6. So we've got Filippo coming forward. Filippo and Charmaine. So you've seen how it works. So you've got 10 minutes. So you're going to share the microphone between the two of you? Great.
Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge God that actually allowed us to be here, allow us to be, give us the talents and the strength to do what we're doing. Yeah, and we're actually here to do our presentations and combat sports. As you all know what combat sport does. But this morning we're going to briefly, quickly talk about boxing is one of the combat sports that actually happen and grow in Palmerston North. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Mayor, Grant Smith, your teams, you're the leaders of our community, so I really appreciate and thank you for allowing us to come here to share, to air what we're doing. Special mention to my friend Billy Mayer. Obviously, he's a big box in New Zealand as well as Manawatu, so we're really grateful to have him. There's a few faces here I recognise, but anyway, so let's get into our presentations. And feel free if you have any questions, please by all means.
Just to remind you, you've only got 10 minutes.
Yep.
And can you hold the microphone up a little bit high so we can all hear you?
I want to introduce my wife.
Yes.
Every clubs they have a special person behind to do the hard yard. Charmaine Choa is going to go through with you.
Yeah, he likes to talk lots too. All right, so I'm here to talk to you guys about combat sport and would like you guys to reflect and have a think on how are you currently supporting that role within the sport in our area. Just listening to the netball and all the funding and the environments and the facilities that they have, just have a little think about what have you guys helped with the combat sport. So our vision is to transform our children's lives. So we've got vulnerable youth. We're basically the welfare system for the Manawatu. Okay, we have a ring based on the 5 kaupapa Māori values. I can send this around so you guys can read it properly because we do have limited time. But we're all about teaching respect, relationships, giving them the guidance, creating leadership youth, and a sense of belonging. Our club provides a sense of belonging for those children at the bottom of the pack. We are really, really focused. So when you think combat sport, a lot of people are just thinking boxing, punching to the face, blood. That is absolutely not what we're about. We're about enabling children to help with the mental health. There are so many issues going on around mental health currently in New Zealand and worldwide. So this is a really important aspect for us, okay? And providing mentorships. We're all about mentoring our youth. Our club, we have a bunch of things that are different to many other sports. Okay, so we look at ensuring that we facilitate for all walks of life. We ensure that we really and specialise in our Māori and Pacifica youth and creating an environment that those children feel like they have a sense of belonging. Without that, you're not going to get the connection. We give back to our community. We give back to our community in so many different ways, which I can elaborate later. Our issue is if we don't address these consequences of the mental health and trauma that's going on with our youth, there's going to be some pretty significant issues that are just going to fold out through the community. Okay, see the picture of the guy to the left there? No legs. That's what we talk about in our club. It's providing for everyone. We have someone here who has no legs, but that's no excuse. Everyone can stand up. We do lots of community days, and that's to ignite passion and bringing families together because our club's all about whānau. Okay, it's not blood relation. Our whole club is one big whānau. I did have a video for you guys, but limited time. I'm going to skip that, but you guys can watch it later. I'll skip it on. We work within places around the Manawatu. Youth Space is one of them. And we had a really neat session. There's a video on that as well, which I will skip. But again, you guys can watch that later. But really neat to make those connections, and then those children come in and seeing us after at the club. Now, our youth classes. Okay, this is what we provide for our children. So we use boxing as our vehicle. It's the vehicle to get these children inside the door. From there, we develop that trust. And once we have that trust, we can change those children's lives. We install honesty, integrity, and commitment. We give them the tools that they need to be able to succeed in life. We give them a reason to wake up in the morning and believe in themselves. This is basically just talking about how all our programs, we focus on the encouragement of the social skills, their self-esteem, huge self-esteem programs, increasing their achievements through schooling, because that's a big part of, if you've been sponsored to come into our club, you're not just given anything in life, you have to actually earn that spot and keep it. So their attendance at school is maintained, and they have to keep that, and they also have to provide behave outside of school as well as inside the club, basically turning them into adults that can give back to our community. Our big issue is teen suicide. Okay, teen suicide is so high right here in our backyard. I don't know if you guys are aware that, someone's dying just every couple of days here in New Zealand. This is a brief, quick chart to show the increase. This was 2018. I couldn't get the data for this year, but it's rising. Here we are. We're up in that top third in our own backyard. Māori and Pacifica, again, they really need our attention. Okay, last year it was 685 dying. We can help these children. The amount of children that are prescribed antidepressants, we're looking at 3,353 children under the age of 14 in 2018, and it's increased since then. Again, we're not just a boxing club. I've got testimonials on here that you guys can read later, talking about children who are unable to attend school because of anxiety, who are now going to school. We've got children that couldn't even look someone in the eye, who is now walking around with his shoulders back and he has confidence. What we provide all our youth with mentors. We start working them from a young age. I actually work with toddlers. I've got 2-year-olds that attend my boxing classes, learning how to follow rules, to listen, to engage with parents and others. We are always looking for sponsors. We don't get all of those wonderful things that netball presentation was about. We're trying to find sponsors. The children that come to us come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They don't have money. We develop relationships with them and the community by getting out there and doing things with the community and involving all family. We increase their fitness because we all know that physical fitness goes hand in hand with your mental health. We provide a place that allows children to unleash their emotions in a safe and welcoming area. We look after them and we show them how to control that. Cultural identity is huge. They need to feel like that they belong there. Perseverance, absolutely. We provide them opportunities. We took a bunch of kids away to Rotorua. One of the children had never even left Manawatu. One had never been away from his mum. Who provided that trip? We did. Where did the money come from? Our back pockets. Okay, again, what does combat sport get? We sit there and listen to our children, and we end every session talking to them about how wonderful they are. learning new skills, and confidence. Our kids walk around proud, and our place is safe. All our coaches and volunteers are police vetted. We provide a wraparound support. So during COVID-19, Filippo and I were spending our days driving around delivering food parcels to our families, because that's who we deal with, families that do not have money. We're providing food. We help children. I've helped a number of families to get into CAFs and get help. We work with community constables. They deliver us children and ask us to help them. We go into schools. And before I play the final quick video, I want to also talk about, we work with people with Parkinson's. I saw in our gym that Parkinson's come along and they pay $5 for a class. Doesn't sound like much, but if you could imagine being somebody who's living on a pension, $5 for these classes adds up. That didn't sit right in my heart. So we offer free classes to people with Parkinson's and people who are elderly. And we just want to be able to give more and more. Again, it's not just boxing. And I'm going to finish on a quick little video and then I'll hand it over to the talker. Oh, is there no noise? Oh, that's a shame. This is our club anyway.
There is another video that I encourage you to watch because that's quite touching as well.
Sorry, you didn't get to talk.
Once again, a special thank you for allowing us to be here and show what the combat sports. As I said, we're boxing, we represent a lot of combat sports. They're doing fantastic things throughout our city, our community, and the influence that goes with it, it's quite powerful. So thanks again.
Thank you. And we do appreciate you coming to us and giving us a presentation. We've got some questions, but just going to start with my one is how many members of the club?
We have, are you talking broad, like everybody, or just children?
Just broadly, yeah.
We have hundreds coming through our club within a week.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Soa and Mrs. Soa, is it? I just want to be very careful in asking this. I'm trying to get a relationship between suicide and this sports, because we have attended many presentations from different sports clubs and none of them have spoken about suicide, number one. Number two, apparently you are targeting only low socioeconomic background children or people. Why is that?
No, we're not, but we provide a place. So we have children that if people can afford to come to boxing, awesome. But so many of our children that come to us can't afford any sport. So I go out and try and find sponsors, or we just volunteer and bring them in. It's the low socioeconomics, not just that's all who we deal with, but let's be real, the boxing is basically a welfare system. We get the police bringing us in, you know, these children that are troubled, no one else can deal with. We can prove that we can make a difference with these kids.
I guess it's sports, boxing, we use boxing as an example, or any other rugby that make people better. I guess a lot of people go through tough times and we do provide that environment. We're not doctors. Matter of fact, we do have police doctors in our gym. It's just another environment that we provide for any of those people can come. Who knows, they might open up and whatever happens in their life. Mm-hmm. And we do have different service to provide some of these people.
I'm not sure anybody from the floor can answer this question. Is it a police policy to take all the troubled children to the boxing sports? Why can't they take to the other sports? Why police is delivering all the troubled kids to them?
Can I?
Well, I'm just wondering that question, whether or not that is a question that could be answered. I don't know whether perhaps Councillor Hancock might be able to answer because he's an ex-policeman.
I probably can shed some light on that. I guess it would be a personal relationship, between Filippo and Charmaine and the various community constables, and they might see that as an option to take the children along there for an introduction, I guess.
We work very closely with the youth aid officer and the local here, and I guess that's where they, because it was a youth, and some of those youth officers, they have an experience, they used to come to our boxing club in the past. So yes, you're right. It's a relationship that we build with these guys here, so they bring it to. And the police doesn't bring to it though.
Councillor Mann wants to follow up.
If I just add that predominantly why combat sports get troubled kids is because there's a lot more one-on-one, whereas a lot of your team sports are about the whole team. So you don't get close enough to deal with the individual as an individual level, whereas combat sports provides that.
Right.
Exactly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Correct.
That's right. Councillor Johnson had the next question.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for your presentation. Actually, I learnt a lot from it because I had never even heard of you before, and I don't know much about boxing, so thank you. I'm just wondering how you do fund your operation. Is it entirely through membership fees?
Yeah, so Filippo works full-time and volunteers his time. I volunteer my time. I am trying to get funding. Funding isn't very easy, especially in combat sport, because we're misinterpreted for what we do. Oh, he's wanting the thing. Just give me a minute. So we're coming, I'm hoping this year, but then obviously COVID's going to put a bit of a dampener on things, that we could get more funding. Yeah, but I do like places like Stakeholder, like they help support those kids that can't afford. Yeah.
Most combat sports at Palmerston North, a lot of them volunteer or are working full times, and most of those boxing club or even any combat sport, they either start with a couple and then we don't have admin, we don't have PA. As I said, I work full time, and obviously at night I train these kids or help in the club. Yeah, give us a fund. We'll be happy.
Well, that was my next question. Is how do you think council could assist you?
I think. Well, I
know. Look, they're all fearful now because I asked that question. But
I look around and see like rugby and basketball and netball, and they are supported with facilities. And someone said to me, their grasses are mowed for them, ready for their game day on the weekend. Their bathrooms are cleaned for them, ready for game day. We don't have any of that. We clean and prep our rooms. So I think we would just like to be recognised on an even playing field to all the other sports in Manawatu, not just us, but all of the combat sports in our area.
So I'll ask you the same question I asked netball about shared facilities. How do you see combat sports sharing facilities with other codes in Manawatu?
I reckon it'd be good. I mean, it'd be good to have some big, massive place that it's a time, I guess.
Everyone wants the same time. So, we've got classes 3:45 after school. Well, say we're running a class at 3:45 and the MMA guy down the road wants to run, like from 3:45 till 8 o'clock at night. We're chocked with classes. So the sharing the facility does become quite difficult.
So you haven't really thought about sharing facilities with other codes?
We have.
Yep.
It's the time.
Okay, thank you. Getting back to my list, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. And following up on the similar line of questioning, so and getting that you both work full time and you volunteer to do this in your evenings, how is the club? What's your operating model? Are you a charity? Are you a not-for-profit? Is this a business? How does it run?
No, we are a charitable trust incorporated. And so the way at the moment we are just funding ourselves, but we are getting better at applying for funding and things like that.
And do you have a relational link with Sport Manawatu?
Sport Manawatu have been tremendously supportive of us, absolutely.
Excellent. So through them, are you accessing the Active Communities Fund?
Yes, I actually just scanned some off today.
So, and that's a way that council, because that's council money, just that's a way that council is helping get support to those children so they can access your services. Okay, thank you. That's it from me.
The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Filippo and Charmaine. Good to see you again. Thank you for all the work you do. The question around funding has already been asked, but where's the centre? Where's the gym based at the moment?
It's out the back of Zenith Fitness on Tremaine Avenue. Yeah.
So quite a big space, and obviously the ring and everything's in there, plenty of room around it.
Yes, yep, quite a big space.
Yeah. You should invite all the councillors down.
We would. Hey, we'll run you guys a boxing session. Everyone come down and we'll take you through what we do with the kids. I think that's a great idea.
Who wants to line up?
So we actually have.
We've had the New Zealand coach in the room, so absolutely.
We'll just keep this to questions, not comments. So, Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I just and thanks, Filippo and Charmaine. Just querying around whether or not you've got any formal connections, I guess, with welfare services, and if so, what does that look like? And with the at-risk kids, I guess I'm interested in how do you actually then subsequently perhaps get parental involvement in the program so that the kids feel more supported?
Yep, so with the social working side of things, I've actually just started working with the CAFs, and I run classes each week for a small group because a lot of them have anxiety issues, so they need their own separate class. So I run a separate class for these children every week, and that's through the Māori Mental Health and the CAFs organisation. I had a phone call from Youth Aid yesterday who has a child that really needs some help, and he's bringing him down today. So it's these organisations that are reaching out to us. We've got Liana from the police. She had a child 2 weeks ago. She came and dropped off to us, and the parents have been really supportive. But what we find is a lot of our kids, the parents aren't quite really willing to drop off and pick up. So we are looking for funding for a van so we can pick up and drop off as well. Yeah.
Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whaftai lava, Filippo and Charmaine. I guess one of my questions is around, you've talked about doing some mentoring for these children, and I'm just wondering if you've had sort of mentoring within your program for yourselves in the kind of charity status that you're in at the moment. Like, do you receive any kind of support or help from people around funding applications, for example, and setting up your charity to get more support, I guess?
Yeah, we've had limited support. I did try paying somebody to help me with a funding application, but again, that's more money coming out of my own personal pocket. And it wasn't successful, so I decided I'd just sort of keep doing it on my own. But we have had help from the lady at the library who's given us a bit of guidance. I'm always open to anyone offering any help. Yeah, like we anything that's offered our way, we greatly will take any learning and opportunities. Yeah.
And how long have you been running as a charitable organisation?
So we're coming up to our 1 year mark.
Right.
Yeah, so once we hit that 1 year, I believe things will be a lot easier.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Well, whaftai molo ngā luenga in tēnei aso. So thanks very much for your work there.
Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation today. I just wanted a little bit more clarity, I guess, on what support you're asking for from council. So obviously Councillor Johnson sort of teased that out a little bit. You've got a venue which you're reasonably well set up at, so you're not, my understanding is you're not looking for venue support. is it around the maintenance of your venue? And then in terms of, and then the second part would be in terms of funding, our, I guess our sport related or active community funds are all sort of, they go out to the community via Sport Manawatu, so they oversee that sort of pot of money. So it sounds like you're accessing financial support from the council through those avenues. So it would just be useful to be really clear around other ways that you are asking for support today.
Let's make it quite clear. Obviously, combat sports don't get recognised, and one of the things that we struggle is funding. For obviously our boxing club, renting, just quite costly to rent the place because it's quite a big one. Gears and that's, I'm talking to the whole of the combat sports. So we do the good things in community, and we don't recognise, we struggle to get funded for whatever reason. So yes, equipment for the lease or the rent of the place we have.
Yeah, the main thing would be, the providing the environment or the place. We have the place, but that does cost us, and currently it costs us out of our own pocket, and that's the same for any other club where, we don't get a sports field given to us. So we've managed to locate a space. That took us a really long time, but it's the funding of keeping these places open for the kids. Yeah, and transport would be amazing too, again.
And so in your conversations with Sport Manawatu, have you talked to them about what funding is available specifically for operations? Because that seems to be, to enable you to run your programs.
I'm aware that they do have some funding like for equipment and things like that, but I'm not aware if they have anything to help with operational costs.
Okay. Thank you.
Finally, Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, as someone who's spent years fundraising for community groups, I understand your problem that you're having with fundraising. Have you thought about having, say, a community event or something? Well, for example, you could get a boxing event with, say, Councillor Meehan and the Mayor fighting together. That would bring a lot of people to see it.
Absolutely, and we were going to be running an event this year, but I think a lot of people would.
Right, thank you for that, Councillor Finlay.
You arranged it, we'll be there.
That brings us to the end of questions. Thank you very much for coming in to giving us this presentation. It's been very, very valuable. And I think the big thing about this was giving us an awareness of what you do for the community more than anything else, is giving us an awareness of what you do. So I think it's been really good and very, very valuable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Pardon?
Comment. Can I just finish off with a comment just to thank Charmaine and Filippo?
First off, can we just move the recommendation and then you can do the comment? Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So we'll just move the recommendation. I'd like to move it. Would you like to second that, Councillor Meehan? And then you can actually now comment. Comment now.
Thank you. Just comment on a few things that have been said, Filippo, Charmaine. First of all, just thank you heaps for coming in. Just to make awareness and just to bring the councillors around the table aware of the work that has been done in the community by combat sports. The hard questions are, what can council provide? The comment about a shared venue, as we know, the headaches with that is it'll be empty most of the time and everybody want it at the same time, which creates the headache of a number of people sharing it. But something can possibly be looked at as a venture. I just wanted to add that an event that was mentioned, just for lighting of those events is $17,000, just for lighting. And then the costs, you're running up to 120 odd thousand to run one of those events. So the outcome at the end of it isn't as big and as pretty as it looks. The Mayor and myself would draw a good crowd. I'm very keen. We could probably get a few bouts from around the table. But on a serious note, I'd just like to thank you for coming in. Thank you for your time and just amazed at the work you're doing and encouraged. Thanks very much.
If we could vote on this, unless anybody else want to comment? You can, yep, thank you. Councillor Johnson.
I'll keep it short, don't worry. I just wanted to say that I found this a really useful presentation, not only from a sport perspective, but from the kind of social good side of things. And I think, you know, it's something that we might need to just have a think about exploring from a community perspective. It's not just about the sport, as you've clearly said. And we have heard from other combat sports in the last year that they've struggled a little bit as well, and they have a similar sort of demographic of people wanting to get involved but struggling. So I think it maybe is an area that needs a bit of a further look. I'm not quite sure how to look further at the moment, but I'll just say it's on my radar now. Thank you.
Councillor Dingwall.
I totally support what's already been said, but also wanted to acknowledge the work that you guys have already done. It's not easy setting up a non-profit from scratch, and so well done on getting that far. There are resources out there that are available in terms of, you know, getting up to speed with things like funding applications that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money. So it's just a matter of, I guess, as a council, us enabling non-profit organisations to be able to find that information and go from there as well. So that's another thing that possibly, you know, we do have a funding team that could possibly assist with that. But yeah, so I guess it's just making sure that the non-profits in our city actually do know what's available. Yeah, so thank you.
Did either of you two want to put a further recommendation up? I'm just putting the offer out.
It just would be very on the fly. So okay. I might need some time to just think about it, but we might catch up offline.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll look. We've already moved it, so we'll move that by the voice. All in favour? Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Right. We'll now go back to the agenda, and we're looking at the public comment grant. You said I can call you at any time. So this is item number 4. But before we go to item number 4, I do have to go back one step and look at item number 2. I just want to ask if there's any notification of additional items. Is there any? No. I've just covered that off, so I can tick that off the list and now go to item number 4. Grant and your lovely colleagues, you've got 3 minutes. Do you want to introduce your friends? Great.
Good afternoon, councillors.
Got a microphone?
Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon. Yep. Grant Taylor, currently president of the Esplanade Scenic Railway. To my left is Alwyn Prosser. He's a life member and he's also our building manager. He was the man in charge of building the Victoria Esplanade station. And to his left is our vice president, Bernard Watson, who's had a lifelong interest in railways. And so comment on the Victoria Esplanade plan. So thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to explain the position of the Esplanade Scenic Railway on the Victoria Esplanade entrance. The volunteers of the railway are in a unique position to comment on the use of the Victoria Esplanade, and their opinions were sought by the committee of the railway and used in the presentation or preparation of these comments. That is because these members, apart from the council gardeners, are the group who probably spend the most time at Victoria Esplanade and are able to observe the vehicle and pedestrian behaviours there. So first, some context. Victoria Esplanade, estimated 500,000 visitors per year. The Lido complex, estimated 300,000 visitors per year. Hiara Katai,
600,000 trips in its first year, twice as popular as expected, but issues. Manawatu Standard stuff of September 2019 reported neighbours in Ditma Drive, Ruha Street were irked. A resident was quoted stating the council had not fulfilled its undertaking to extend off-street parking at the Esplanade Scenic Railway. Wild-based recovery. It's unique, it's world class. It is 100,000 plus visitors per year. Cafe Esplanade, 50,000 customers per year. Esplanade Scenic Railway, 70,000 passengers per year. 50% are from outside Palmerston North. 17% are from the South Island and the rest of the world. There are also sports groups who use the already provided car parking area heavily during their seasons. Therefore, based on its 50 years as a major user of the Esplanade, and based on comment it has received from other major users of the Esplanade and nearby areas, the railway states, as it has done consistently in any consultation, that the establishment of a traffic light controlled intersection at Park Road, Victoria Esplanade is vital to make the entrance safer and to allow a vista down Cooke Street, drawing visitors into the Esplanade. That the driveway entrance to Victoria Esplanade should then dogleg over to the existing roadway for the traffic flow through the Esplanade. That a substantial number of landscaped hard surface parks be established in the grass area to provide for the previously mentioned substantial number of visitors to the immediate and surrounding areas. And that this parking then be linked to the already established parking area by the Victoria Esplanade station so that they are all one area.
Grant, that's 3 minutes. How much more did you have?
Carry on.
Oh no, sorry, you only had 3 minutes. Okay. Did you have a lot more?
Just a little paragraph. I did an introduction in my time limit.
Yeah.
And that took a while because like these guys are famous.
We can ask you some questions.
Very well.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just really intrigued what you might have covered if you had more time. Was there any other new points that you wanted to add if you had more time, Grant?
My comments in relation to your question would be that the railway is disappointed it does not support any of the options in regard to the provision of parking. A net increase of 5 car parks in option 1 hardly fulfills the undertaking given by council to the residents of Ruha Street, Ditma Drive. This is further compounded with no link to vehicles to the existing car park by the Victoria Esplanade station. The established parking area around the Victoria Esplanade station is a blot on the landscape and unsafe. But recognising the financial restraint required after the pandemic, it is acceptable to the railway for work on this area to be delayed for a defined period. None of the options advanced in the opinion of the railway capture all of these points. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm. Looks like there's no further questions. Thank you very much for coming in for your public comment. We do appreciate it. So I'd like to move public comment, seconded by Councillor Rutherford. We'll look to vote with all in favour. Aye. Thank you, it's carried. We'll now look to move That's on page 11. I look to move the minutes. Seconded by Councillor Meehan. No, you're absent. So, seconded by Councillor Barrett. Nobody's got anything to raise on the minutes? Okay. All in favour on the minutes? Aye. Aye. Thank you. We'll now look to item number 8. Police and abstention.
I'll abstain also, Madam Chair. If you're recording abstentions, Madam Chair, we were
Sorry.
also absent.
I just sorry about that. Just put those down. So item number 8, we have got.
Madam Chair, if I can ask Andrew Phillips and Chris Lai to join me at the table as the professionals with the detail behind this report.
Thank you. So I'm not going to say this, take it as read. I'm going to get you to take us through the report and take your time. Thank you.
So, councillors, this is a substantial report in that it has quite a bit of detail in it, but also substantial in that the information within the report has been developed over many months. In fact, it's taken over a couple of years. And so the primary genesis of this report is the Esplanade Master Plan, which the council consulted on with the community, and included in that was a redevelopment of the entrance to Victoria Esplanade coming off Park Road. The options developed in this report are based around that master plan, and that master plan being divided into separable portions, and that followed on from a councillor workshop. If you recall, councillors, where we brought some high-level options to you with no costings, and the feedback received at that workshop was that where was the option that was in the master plan and that we wanted that option costed, that there was no more money in the budget, so ideally we would be bringing back options to you that best fitted with the strategic direction outlined in the master plan, but it was also cognizant of the budget available within the long-term plan. So this report and the associated upgrade of the intersection at Cooke Street and Park Road bear those things in mind. So if I take the intersection of Cooke Street and Park Road first, progressively over time the council has upgraded Cooke Street and all of the intersections to ensure that the safety issues have been resolved. It's the last intersection remaining. And as has been presented in the public comment, there are a number of things that have happened in the interim period since that first Cooke Street upgrade began, and one of them significantly is Hiaro Kotahi and the linkages and the flow of traffic to that. However, the problems that we've always had at that intersection remain. It is a heavy transport passage route around the city centre. It has people coming and going from sports facilities and the Victoria Esplanade and the Lido. And so those things in combination with the opening of Hiaro Kotahi means that the design of that intersection needs to be cognizant of those changing volumes and those different users. So the options presented in the report look to those two things. As we have progressed through developing the options, we have looked at it on 3 lenses. The first lens is the lens of the strategic plan and the options that have been developed and have been put forward in this report, which I'll get Aaron Phillips to take you through shortly, have been given consideration to that strategic direction and rating against the principles that are contained within that master plan. And as you can see from the report, all 4 options that have been prepared do align with that strategic direction. The second thing that was considered, find my page, is the stakeholder feedback on the options. So we have a Victoria Esplanade user group in place, and we have an adopted master plan. So the feedback that has been sought on the options has been largely around those members of the Victoria Esplanade user group, and the comments from those stakeholders are included within the report. It's quite clear from the feedback that whilst there's not a consensus of opinion on it, most people have similar views, and those things are largely focused around the provision of car parking. And finally, the last consideration area was the available budget and the costs associated with the options that are being put forward. So the costing of those options are based on purely those separable portions being put together into what would be logical construction options. There is probably a number of combinations of those various pieces. However, there are some that you couldn't just do in isolation. They would be isolated portions, if you know what I mean. So the options that we've got in front of us there are based on that. And from that, you can see that none of the options sit within the budget, given if you take into account contingency and that we've obviously got a very uncertain market out there at the moment. There are a number of options that are closer than others. So it isn't an easy thing to do when we're looking at something like this, because in effect what we're doing is we're trying to balance three things and come up with a compromise around those. However, it is of the officer's professional opinion that the option that has been put forward as the preferred option, option 1, allows you to address within budget the strategic fit and the user feedback, and also allows you to continue in the future with the further stages of the master plan. It doesn't compromise that. It allows you in the future, as money becomes available, to add to that in line with the feedback and the incorporation into the master plan. So I'll ask now that Aaron just takes you through the slides that we have in front of us here in terms of those options, but we will keep them on the board so that if there's any discussion or any further questions, we can use those as visuals.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, sorry, and Mr. Mayor, apologies. I'll just take you through the options, and I guess that hopefully that's fairly self-evident in the report. We've had two, sorry Chris that we're skipping over the intersection at this point. The first slide is just an image of what the realigned entrance to the Esplanade will look like. Generally it's from one of the options, but the overall first impression coming down Cooke Street is displayed in the slide. It hasn't got some of the details of how garden beds might sit, how pieces of artwork or entrance features might sit, but it gives you that general appearance of improving the visibility of the Esplanade from Cooke Street, and hopefully additionally encouraging more people to access associated car parks for Hiara Kotahi. So I just thought we'd pop that up and show you how that looked on a big screen. As Kathy detailed, we looked at it in a series of pieces that you could select a number of these at various points during the long-term development of the Esplanade and take it in chunks. But the options that were put forward were focused largely on the front part of the park and get due to the budget constraints. So option 1 is focused more heavily on the aesthetic appeal of, sorry, my apologies, got that backwards, on the desire for car parking. It results in a small net increase in car parking, but it should be noted that that's as a result of the major entrance upgrade near the Scenic Railway car park is going to result in a small number of car parks being lost. So the overall car parking numbers between the two would be a small increase in this case. It spends a little bit less effort in the aesthetic and visual impact of the entrance to the park, and that's traded off with the car parking. Just to visually represent that, you'll have it in your papers, but on the big screen it's quite useful. You can see that it retains a small amount of the car parking immediately adjacent to the Lido that it already exists, and it adds a car park just past the point at which the road would traverse back over. And it doesn't deal with the service entry to the John Bolt pool. It leaves that in that position to keep to budget. The second major option is to take a more aesthetic approach and a better visual approach to the entrance to the Esplanade. It spends more money in Area C by relocating the service entrance to the rear of the John Bolt pool, the service yard at the back, to get that away from the entrance, provide more space for aesthetic improvements, a better feeling of entering a park under this option. But in order to stay on budget, that forgoes the all-weather hard surface car parks. We do note that for both options, we're proposing that we use some sort of temporary measures or movable measures to open up some fair weather car parking on the grass areas, much like you see to the west of the Lido on the grass area, which the car parking overflows onto there at peak times during the year. That we could, with both options, we could make that available. Now, it doesn't deal with the wet weather demands very well. Again, that's a representation of that, very similar, but remove the car park and change the entrance to the service entry for the Lido. Oh, apologies. I should just note a major feature of both options. I'm not sure if I've got a little pointer on here. Just to the, I just hope no one minds if I stand. It might be easier to gesture a little bit. Both options feature a boulevard treatment to the old entrance to the Esplanade, which is attempting to fulfil the master plan requirements to make the most of the Cherry Avenue. It's a space where people will be able to gather and be amongst the cherry trees without the traffic, and it will provide a gathering space in that area. The other two options, you'll see, sorry, I don't have slides for those, they basically add the treatment of the car park next to the scenic railway to the tune of about $150 to those two options. Option 3 and 4 are options 1 and 2 plus treatment of the car park down at the scenic railway. There was a more extensive option, a more extensive treatment of that car park scoped, but it came in over $500,000, and we're paying heed to your direction that we keep to budget. But we think the designers think for about $150,000 we could tweak up the flow of the traffic through that car park, soften the look of it with some additional grass berms, and make it sit better in that space with the new entrance to the river. However, those two options are $150,000 over budget over the other two options.
So just finally, what I'd also like to say is that these two projects were appropriately funded within the long-term plan. It makes sense to design and keep those two projects together, particularly from a construction point of view. Obviously, we're going to create some disruption in the intersection. We're going to create some disruption in the entranceway. We've got curve lines for the intersection that will roll around the corner into the Esplanade. So a decision on this matter and the Park Road Cooke Street intersection, ideally we would carry those two things together through the detailed design phase, through the development of construction drawings, and through the tender phase, and then work with a construction timeline that works in, obviously, in and around the sport and the use of the Lido and the Esplanade. But allows us to use ideally one contractor to deal with both pieces of work.
So you're happy to take questions? Great. So I've got the Mayor to start with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kathy and team. I'm just a little bit confused. I think you might, just possibly because of the terminology. I look at pages 47 and 48, which give the overview master plan, and then we jump to all these options in terms of the delivery. Are these staged? Because I go to page, I think it's 53, and you see the long-term master plan with separate portions. Is this the staging of things rather than options?
The objective of having the master plan scoped was to ensure that whatever options were put forward could fit within that. So we're not, if council were of a mind in the future to add further stages, then they would logically flow, but we're not attempting to provide a staged option presentation at this point. Two different options for the entrance.
Okay, so we're going to have basically a big green space in the middle with no connection, no vista, no, it's just going to be...
There'll be a visual connection, but you're correct, no physical connection.
There's vista of a whole lot of grass in the middle and a bit of tarmac at the front and a bit of tarmac at the back.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting, thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Kathy and team, for the presentation. Just I guess to open up, trying to understand, there's been a lot of discussion over the years of sight lines and their value. I'm just trying to understand what a sight line actually is.
I guess there's different kinds of sight lines, and my learned colleague here would have a different interpretation than a traffic management point of view. But from a landscaping point of view, what we're looking with the sight line, if we're looking at crime prevention through environmental design, then you're looking at an ability for people to see activity that's occurring and coming and going and improve the safety. However, from a landscaping point of view, a sight line can sometimes be something that's called progressive realisation, where you may be enticed because of what's in front of you to further venture forward. And so the dogleg in that case may say, well, these are the gates. I get to that point, I wonder what's around the corner. So a sight line doesn't necessarily always mean a straight line of sight with nothing in it.
Thank you for that. And I suppose to explore that a bit further then, it seems that the sight line that we've been offered here is a 2-lane road with parking at the side of it. Is it essential to have a 2-lane road to be a sight line?
So you're referring to the 2-lane road, if I take that, coming into the entrance?
Well, so for instance, I think just where the mayor was on page, I think 49.
Sorry, we'll just get a copy of the agenda in front of us. We don't have one.
Yeah, long-term master plans, the tag on it, page 49. Perhaps I've, oh, well, depending on which version of our digital agenda you have, it's either page 55 or 49, so.
Okay, so the picture you're looking at there, are you referring to the 2-lane, which is listed there as the key vehicle access, not the key sight line? Are you referring to that as being the sight line? I'm just trying to understand your question, sorry.
I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is to understand if we wish to provide a sight line from the intersection into the Esplanade, does it have to be a 2-lane road, or are there other ways of delivering a sight line?
There are many other ways of delivering a sight line, but the master plan is intended not to just deliver sight lines, but to also consider vehicle access and different user groups like cyclists and pedestrians. And so, as I highlighted in the presentation of the report, there's a number of competing things when we're looking at this master plan. And in some ways, some of the sight line for pedestrians and cyclists is provided through the walkway alongside the Victoria Esplanade drive itself. So there isn't a single sight line here. There are various sight lines depending on which avenue you're coming down and into the Esplanade.
Thank you. Further question, just trying to understand I guess the total number of lanes of road that we end up having. I mean, we've already got 2 lanes there. We're then proposing a further 2 lanes?
So on the options, when we went to the councillor workshop, the councillors signalled to us very strongly that they wanted the dogleg option coming into the Esplanade for the vehicles. So that would make the most use of the current existing access way. To manoeuvre and move into the car parking area to allow people to park and other cars to pass through, then you necessarily have to have a certain width of carriageway to achieve that. So it's not intended as a two-way road. It's intended that if we were to extend later and provide all that additional car parking, that most people who weren't accessing that car parking would be going in down and through the trees, and those that were accessing the car park would be able to do so safely while other people were manoeuvring in and out of car parks.
Okay, thank you. So that probably does go some way to clarifying the diagram that's on my page 51, but I'm not sure what page it's on and yours. And if you could just take us through that, it's the one with all the arrows in different colors, to really understand what the traffic proposal is there. It'd be helpful if we get it on screen. But if it's not
certainly. So just to clarify, page 51.
Page 51 of mine, but I've seen a colleague next to me has another version of. Okay, 51 on hers as well. That's great.
So attachment 2. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'll get Aaron to take you through this.
Yes, Councillor. So if maybe I'll just hold it up briefly to check it. We're looking at the right diagram. Is that?
Can we get it on screen? This is.
That might help. Yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's not in the presentation.
It's page 49, everyone.
Okay, I think I have the right one. So the main access shown with the heavy dotted blue line was a car parking access. The way that might develop over time would depend on the demand at the time or how council might view it. You might decide to, for example, to build the car park back up from the scenic railway car park if the demand was down in that area, rather than complete to work down from the Park Road side, but the view was perhaps over time we may end up with an extensive car park there. The designers felt that it could be put together in pieces and not necessarily completed in a whole. It would depend on what the pressures of the particular time were, but it might mean that you may have an extended car park off Park Road and perhaps an extended car park at the bottom of the scenic drive and then a small connection between the two rather than car parking the whole way through. But we wanted to demonstrate what could be achieved if there were a heavy car parking demand and that were the thing that you wanted to pursue, councillor. So that was mapped out. The dog leg across to the main road. There were various iterations and discussions on this one. There was one thought that could have potentially over time, if the connection down the heavily dotted line to the Scenic Railway car park could dog leg out at that point, and the existing drive could be converted to a pedestrian cycle boulevard. So essentially taking the boulevard presented in the options here and carrying that down to wherever I hope I'm explaining this well, it's quite difficult in this environment, but to wherever the road might dog leg out. And you'll see that there's a number of accesses to car parks shown down that length, and you could dog leg out at any one of them depending on what was the driver at the time. And then the cycle pedestrian access that's shown in the pedestrian access shown in the dotted pink line is presumed to be continued down the middle as it's shown in the diagram, but could eventually be relocated across to the existing access boulevard if that were closed. So perhaps not represented particularly well in this diagram, and perhaps what's created some confusion. There wasn't an intent. The other option, of course, would be to maintain two accesses, which is what's shown, which might have one predominantly for parking and accessing various activities from that point, and the other one if you were carrying on further into the Esplanade. So I guess that we could iterate this a number of ways.
So just a further comment on what Aaron has covered there. Whilst this is the master plan, it came through very strongly during your workshop, councillors, that you weren't supportive of creating 2 roadways side by side. So the option that you're presented here is largely intent on continuing on the existing roadway and providing some off-street car parking. If in the future demand was of such a level that you wanted to develop car parking, then you could do that in accordance with the master plan, or you could do it in as Aaron said, smaller sections throughout there, or do it in another way like all weather. But it came through very clearly in your last workshop that there wasn't the support for having 2 separate vehicle accessible ways in this. It just wasn't efficient.
Thank you for those answers. I will hand back to the chair in a moment, but just say thanks for clarifying that, and I guess the understanding that I take from that is that, for instance, the diagram that we've just talked through actually demonstrates quite a bit of optionality yet. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just a question from me about the user group feedback on page 85. So you said, Kathy, when you did talk about it, that they weren't unanimous. I just wanted you to unpack that a little bit.
The reason around that is that, within any place, all people have competing interests and views. And so the Lido and the sports clubs, being right up by that entranceway, have a particular interest in having car park and dealing with the big demands, particularly through the summer months for the Lido and the winter months for the sport, up at that Park Road entrance. Whereas obviously with the Scenic Railway, their interest is having their patrons close to their station, and their interest around car parking is further down that end. And the cafe is interested in additional car parking in the site as a whole. So what was relatively consistent was we need more car parking. Where the consistency probably didn't exist between the user groups was where should that car parking be located.
What about for the bridge? Because we're getting a lot more people using the bridge now as well, because that was always a big part.
Over the last 12 months, we've been doing some monitoring of the parking around the bridge. We've been finding that on the nearby streets, they actually haven't been full at all. The car park itself at the bridge does get full for very short periods of time, but not enough to really significantly warrant car parking for the bridge itself. Part of the surveying we did hourly surveys around the railway car park. And we didn't find that was full at all times at all. Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers on me at the moment or can remember them, but I didn't notice them as a particular issue.
So just to follow up, the sports fields, would they pro it or against having extra car parking? I didn't actually understand that.
Both Manawatu Rugby and Manawatu Cricket were advocating for an increased number of all-weather car parks.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to understand the access to the pool. I noticed there's some variations whether we include that or alter it. Alter it or don't touch it. I'm just wanting to understand how much is the access used? I'd imagine it'd be very rare.
You're correct. It is infrequent. It's a service access for picking up recycling materials and accessing some plant at the back of the pool, so it's not particularly frequent. I couldn't give you exact numbers.
And I just wanted to understand the importance. It's just over 100,000 to alter it, but you've got it in either or. But is it a pick and mix type of expenditure for the benefit?
In terms of the pool, we deliver liquid chlorine and other chemicals through that service entrance. From a hazard management point of view, we do have to have an access there and it has to be clear. So ongoing operations of the pool, that's really important. You're quite right. The cost isn't large, and the access and the car parking there, the Lido and we'll see LM in particular, we're very interested in being able to retain that because of the proximity not only to the pool but to the gymnasium, and there's another entrance to the gymnasium there. So there's a user group there's a user group that uses that car parking as well as that need for that service entrance.
Okay, thank you. I've just got 2 other questions, Madam Chair. The second one is in regards to the cycle access to get further through to Arokotahi. And I understand there was talk around the campground at the back to maybe take some land to kind of open up the sight lines down to the river at the railway end of the park. Is that another stage, or has that been considered as part of this work at all in the scope?
No, that's part of the river framework work, and we've just gone for resource consent on that work at the moment.
Okay, that's pleasing. Thank you. And actually, I'm happy with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kathy, I think I get it now, so I'm a bit slow. But option 3, the delivery of that on page 59, which I think the railway people spoke about, is A, B, D, and K, and you said that it gives only 9 extra parks, but you indicated it could do some extra fair weather sort of car parking as well, if that's right. And then if you link that into page 53, which has all the stages of the master plan, in time, if council wanted to, it could continue the other stages. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the idea of the separable portions. They're pieces that can be constructed in isolation, and you could add to or do less depending on your budget and your timing of funding.
Got you, because I just was unsure why we were doing 2 little bits, and I get that. And I know we've got to work to a budget as well, but overall that would give you an extra stages E, F, G, H and J would give you an extra 70 plus car parks, in total 186. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Kathy and Chris and Aaron. So just looking at option 2 with the fair weather parking, that gives us the best gain in parking spaces for the money that we've got at the moment, doesn't it? If I understand correctly.
It does in fair weather, but it wouldn't be year-round parking.
Okay, so what's the assessment of how many months those parks would be usable? Are we just talking about the summer months, or would they only be out for a couple of wet months in the winter? I mean, what proportion of time do we think you could park on there?
It's a little bit of a how long is a piece of string answer. It'll depend on the weather conditions, how frequently people were driving on them. We're not super confident. It's hard to be confident on how well they perform because we haven't used them before. You might recall there used to be a leisureplex in that area 20 years ago, and when we removed that, there was a number of there was bumper boat structures and things that were removed, and we just grassed over. So there's a little bit of uncertainty about the ground conditions and how they might perform.
Okay, so option 2, without the fair weather parking, actually results in a loss of parks then, does it?
It'll result in a loss of 19 all-weather parks.
Right. Not taking into account the option of the extra 33 parks that we would gain in fair weather. Right. Correct. Okay, cool. So option 1 then, which gives us a net gain of 4 spaces.
It's a net gain of 4 once we factor the loss of the car parks due to the new entrance to the.
So that's the loss of the car parks on Park Road that.
Loss of car parks down by the scenic railway due to the new entrance being put to here Arokotahi in the river path.
No, because in delivery 1 there's no car park down at the. In option 1 there's no modification to the car park.
There's a separate program delivering a river entrance next to the scenic railway that Kathy mentioned has just been resource consent applications in for. Part of that work results in a loss of a number of car parks down immediately adjacent to the railway. So where they're parked along the fence.
No, I understand that, but that's not what you've got in option 1 here. In option 1, you've just got A, B, and D. A being the new entranceway, B being the dogleg, and D being a small new hard standing car park. It doesn't mention anything about the Esplanade, about the railway car park in option 1.
If that's the case, it's an oversight in terms of the calculation. Or if you look on page 55, thank you, Kathy, page 55 that talks about car parking, it notes that there's 36 new spaces in A and D. 19 are removed from area A as a result of some rejigging. I guess that's a little bit of a slip of term, but I mentioned 13 potentially affected by the river entrance proposals, giving you a net gain of 4, but they give a little bit of 4 to 6 depending on how things pan out in detail.
Okay, so
we've considered the car parking as an overall thing.
I'm honestly really confused now, because when I look at, and please, if someone can see where I've got, when I look at delivery option 1 on page 57, it's got A, B, and D. There's no highlighting down by the railway station, and it says net parking gain 4 spaces.
We haven't highlighted K, but in the car parking calculation, you'll note that it subtracts 13 potentially affected river car park entrances. So for the whole of the parking environment, we've given you a net calculation. Otherwise, we may have been accused of fudging numbers, and we'd said, oh, we've gained a certain number at the front without factoring the loss of the car parks.
The General Manager wants to speak. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, Councillor, I'm in agreement. The 13 shown here are from a future project, not the subject matter of this proposal.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So in fact, because okay.
So that in mind, you're talking about a gain of
17 car parks. That's what I couldn't understand looking at this, why it was only a gain of 4.
Yeah.
Right.
Quite right.
Okay.
My apologies, that wasn't presented particularly well in hindsight.
Thank you. I was wondering if I was going mad. Okay. So, and now I understand that delivery option 1, if that was all we had money for and budget for and chose to go ahead with now, will give us a net gain for now of 17 hard standing car parks. Correct? Okay, thank you.
Right. I think that's all the questions. I propose to take a break, and then when we come back, we have done very well, guys. We're going to put the recommendations up. There's been a little bit of around the recommendations, so we'll put them up as we've got them. So we'll wait till after the break. So it is 10 to 3. We'll come back at 3:05. Thanks, everyone.
The workshop as well.
No. So not on this at the moment. Okay, goodbye.
At the moment, we may all that. So.
can we get back started again, please? I do my clap thing. Right, we'll put the recommendations up, please. Thank you, Sarah. So recommendations 1 and 2 as are in the report. Pretty straightforward, being moved by myself and Billy. Recommendation 3 is being moved by Councillor Rutherford. What? Sorry, Sarah. Yeah, Councillor Rutherford, do you want to speak to that, please?
Sorry, so I've moved that. If we got a seconder.
Yeah, it's me. Should be up there.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Hufford. This is a alternative recommendation to recommendation 3. I guess I appreciate that elected members haven't had a chance to read this up on the screen. There was some information circulated by Councillor Barrett, which has got these recommendations in it as well. And I guess the essence of this is that from the workshop that we had in February and the discussions we had around what our intentions were for the Esplanade, I am struggling to see a proper correlation, I guess, through to what the recommendations are, given as well the feedback from the user groups and the ranking prioritisation exercise that was done in there, and what options came out on top versus what's been recommended. So what I'm trying to look for is, I guess, a bit of a middle ground, but still provide some clear direction on what I believe was the discussion that we have been having along the way around what we're looking the entrance way into the Esplanade on that side to encompass. So that's the recommendation is quite clear with the points.
If you can read it again. So we'll just go on to comment on 1, 2 and the new 3 now. We're not doing, recommendation 4 and 5 are staying the same, so we can do the whole lot if we want to. So the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, sorry, councillors, we have workshopped this, and yet we come up with yet another thing because we don't like what we're seeing, or one or two of us don't. When you look at the Victoria Esplanade, established in the late 1800s, it had form, and actually to go back to 5.4, actually all of them are quite even, and it's quite subjective. And I know it was done by our planning guys. We're now through that stage, and this is an infrastructure project. We've got it staged. I think a lot of this is just going back to the drawing board yet again and relitigating it because we don't like what we see. I'm sorry, but I think we're playing, we're trying to design it on the fly. We've gone, sorry, I just don't agree with this at all. I mean, we might as well just do nothing and just clean up the entranceway at Cooke Street and Park Road and just leave it as it is, because this adds no value at all. And the user groups want stuff done. We've got a master plan there, and yet we're ignoring it by doing something on the fly. So I'm not supporting this at all. I I put a notice of motion that we go back to the original, which is supporting option 1, stays within our budget. It gives us a start and we can continue on as we go. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I support option 1. Now I understand what it is. And I'm not sure that motion 3 really is in contradiction with option 1 anyway, to be honest. I just think it's less precise. And I think if we're going, we have to do something about the junction for safety. If we're going to do something about the junction for safety, we may as well combine it with an increase in car parks, because that's the biggest problem that I see, is that there's not enough car parking for all of the activity that's taking place in that area between the Lido and the sports fields and the Esplanade and so on. So to my mind, option 1 is reasonably well fitted to the budget. It still leaves us the option to do the rest of it when we have the budget to do it. And it addresses the safety concerns and provides extra parking. I don't think that the fair weather parking is a suitable solution. And then the other options are just more expensive still, 3 and 4 with a bit extra. So I think I won't be supporting 3, and if there's a motion to go for option 1, then that's what I think would be the best solution. And I think this whole question has been going on for far too long, and we just need to make a decision and crack on with it.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wondered if through you I could ask the mover what is envisaged by providing distinct separation between the Esplanade Scenic Drive and the car park areas, as opposed to what's on the table for option 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the key point is that if you look at the long-term plan that's outlined in the document, it still provides for a thoroughfare with the extended car parking completed. And so if you the bones of motion 3, the alternative motion, are very similar to option 1, but it's eliminating any future potential rat running or those sorts of things through car parking spaces.
Thank you for clarifying. To move to comment through you, Madam Chair. I came into this quite confused with the papers in front of us between the master plan document and the options and the other things that weren't options. And so the debate was useful, and I thank colleagues for their questions, which helped to illuminate some of those issues. And on that basis, I am happy with the option 1 as presented by the officers. I think, as Councillor Johnson, I don't necessarily see the alternative recommendation as being in conflict with that. And in fact, there's some elements of that I like, particularly the clear instruction to retain the heritage value of the Park Road entranceway. But that first part at A about seems to be predetermining future decisions of council that we may need to make and that are not necessary at this stage. So I will not support the new motion and will look to the motion that's been signalled. Thank you.
Councillor Finlay.
Here we go again. We're great at this. We procrastinate, we make decisions and we procrastinate, and then we'll decide to have another report and we'll decide to have another workshop. We've made the decision already. To remind you, councillors, we've made the decision to go ahead and do this. Option 1 is there, and that's the start. Let's stop procrastinating and thinking about whether or not we'll think about doing it. Let's just do it. Let's make a start, because it's time. We have decided to start one. So let's go with the option, with the original recommendations, and I will not support this this new one. We can no longer put the community of this city in the situation where they have to wait for us to make up our minds anymore. Can I just remind you of some of the other things we've procrastinated? No, I won't, because there's too many of them. But let's just get on with doing it, shall we?
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually, share the sense of impatience that's been conveyed by probably all of us around the table, certainly those that have spoken so far, and certainly I'm keen that we get work underway here. But I'm also very cautious about something that could send us off in the wrong direction. And in effect, option 1 through option 4 begin to send us down a track where eventually we end up with 2 separate 2-lane roads going in here. And to my mind, not actually delivering a good amenity outcome or a good safety outcome. You think about people scooting up and down, looking for a car park at the same time that other people have just parked and are unloading their family, trying to get organized and get into the park. To my mind, mixing the movement of vehicles and the parking of vehicles and unloading, especially of young children or elderly, is risky, and it's not needed. At the Manawaroa entrance, we've got plenty of examples where we've actually provided good car parking space that doesn't actually have cars rumbling through it, possibly at speed, looking to get into the next parking bay to see if they can find some car parks. So my concern with option 1 is that it is the first step towards actually creating 2 separate roads in to the Esplanade from that entrance, and I don't feel that that is the direction that we want to go over time. We have a lower cost option that is perfectly suitable to actually provide the needs of the community at this stage, which is to link into the existing road and to provide parking bays off the side of that as needed. And those parking bays can then be well separated from any through traffic movement so that people that are loading or unloading, children and families, whoever it happens to be, has an actual car park to do that in rather than having to do it along the side of the road. And so every one of these new car parks at the moment is something along the side of the road, which isn't actually in keeping with what we would want for convenience or safety in that area. That's my principal concern with it and why I'm supporting the motion that is on the screen in front of us, because it will deliver for lower cost a safer and more suitable outcome in terms of the access needs and enable us to stage additional parking as we need.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm quite comfortable with option 1, but I also agree with the concerns and intent of this other motion that's in front of us in terms of not wanting that additional, what I think is an access to the car park become a bit of a thoroughfare. And I think the issues that have been raised there are very valid. And I think if we were to progress option 1 today, I'm confident that we will have the opportunity, and I'm sure that officers will hear the issues that have been addressed. In terms of the decisions we make down the track for other sections of that car park, I'm sure that that can be adjusted, but I don't see that as a reason to really hold off and ask for a further report at the moment. So I won't be supporting what's in front of us, although I support the intent and the thinking behind it. I'll be happy to support the notice of motion to progress option 1 today with a view to making sure that we provide good clarity going forward to ensure that that access to the car park does not become a thoroughfare.
It looks like there's no further. Oh, you didn't actually indicate. Thank you, Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to second the Mayor's notice of motion to revert back to the original recommendations in the order paper. I'm imagining it's recommendations 1 through to 5, and I've had that confirmed. I'm happy to second that. I think that gives the direction, clarity.
Councillor, 1 and 2 have already been moved.
Okay, Okay, whatever's in the mayor's name, I'm happy to move. It comes down to the, that sounds funny, doesn't it? Because what he was saying in this paper is what's been proposed in the detail for it. There's the pros and cons around the fair weather option versus the hard stand. I prefer the hard stand because the park gets enormous use for winter codes, and so you don't want to have the overflow into all the neighbouring streets. So we can make that provision for 12 months of a year. That's clear for my mind. The option 1 also excludes the altered access to the indoor pool, which I think is unnecessary at this point, and saves the extra $100,000 in the budget line. The other thing I'm very supportive of is making a clear indication for the traffic signals to close off that access to Nathan Street or Nathan Way or Place or whatever it's called, for the safety benefit of the intersection. That makes that very clear. And I'd actually be open but happy to leave it for a later stage, increasing the car parks up by the scenic railway, because it's been mentioned in the report, it wasn't clear to me initially, but the reduction of up to 13 car parks up at that end of the Esplanade, I think we want to at least keep like with like, because the usage there, particularly on weekends and particularly is high, and that could put a pressure point for young families trying to get access. I'm pleased the point was raised around the river framework, around the opening up the access way from the back of the campground there, so we can get a clearer sight line down to the river. It's a shame that this report didn't introduce the two programs, because they are, I see, very much interlinked. So supportive of giving clear direction. I don't want to hold up any work in this area, and I think I agree with it's been workshopped again and again, and I think this is a pretty fair outcome. The little scenic Esplanade entry, which has been the Park Road entrance forever, is quite a nice feature there, just making that access for pedestrians and cyclists, and keeping that cherry blossom lane feature. I think it really softens that approach from the street. And so for all those very reasons, I'm going to support option 1 in this regard. Thank you.
Councillor Tourneys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support option 1, but I also look at motion 3, and motion 3 quite clearly puts an end to the long-term master plan, which is wrong. I mean, say, if you have a real good look at the long-term master plan, what it does is suggest that the key vehicle access is right through the middle of the car park. It also promotes the actual current access to be a one-way access and parking. But down as you come down further south, it sort of says it's going to be two-way access maintained. So which way are you going to have your one-way direction parking? So at the moment, support option 1, but I think somebody needs to have a real hard look at the overall final master plan as to what's proposed of vehicle movements through a car parking area where children will be moving around, parents will be taking their children out of the cars, cars will be backing out of the 90-degree parking again, and we're promoting it as a major access way. So have a real hard think about it.
Thank you, councillors. I think just about everybody has spoken. Does anybody else want to speak? Okay, I just want to give my feedback. I think if you look at 5.4 and what the recommendation is says that it's not going to hold things up. It's just asking the Chief Executive to report back on an alternative option encompassing the following features of the option to be assessed from clause 5.4. So it's not holding things up, which is what several councillors have alluded to. It's just asking the Chief Executive to come back on a report to do with 5.4, but not holding things up. So I think there's a bit of a misinterpretation in that, yeah. But just wanting to point that out. I am going to support it for that reason, because I don't think holding this up was the intention of this recommendation. But we will call for a division. So thank you, Hannah. If you can do that, please. I think we're just doing 3 at the moment.
On motion 3, Councillor Naylor.
Against.
Against. Councillor Dingwall.
4.
4. Councillor Beattie.
Against.
Against. Councillor Meehan.
Against.
Against. Councillor Harpeter.
4.
4. Councillor Hancock.
Against.
Against. Councillor Rutherford. 4. Councillor Bowen. Against. Councillor Barrett.
4.
4. Councillor Petrinas. 4. Councillor Finlay. Against. Councillor Dennison. Against. Mayor Smith. Against. Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Against. Councillor Butt.
So I'm abstaining.
Abstain. Thank you.
So that motion has failed with 1 abstention, 5 for it and 9 against. So if we look at 1 and 2, if we can vote for that. Pardon? I just read out the results. I'll just read them out again. 1 abstention, 5 for, 9 against. You got that, Sarah? Right, we'll do 1 and 2. If all happy to have 1 and 2 together? By voice? Those in favour? Aye. Okay, so we've got the 3, 4 and 5 have been moved by... Pardon?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I just wondered if there was anyone against.
Was there anyone against? Okay, sorry about that. No one's against. Sorry, Sarah, there's no one against. Right. Right, getting back in my train of thought. Councillor Dennison was seconding all 3 of these. Does everybody want to have them together, or do you want to have them separate, and do you want to have them by division? All together? Oh no, do you want to?
I'd like to see 3 separate by division.
3 separate by division. So should we do that one first, Hannah? This is just for number 3, everyone.
Councillor Butt.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Dingwall.
Against.
Against. Councillor Barrett.
Against.
Against. Councillor Rutherford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Harpeter.
4.
4. Councillor Johnson.
4.
4. Councillor Meehan.
4.
4. Councillor Hancock.
4.
4. Councillor Dennison. 4. Councillor Petrinas. 4. Councillor Naylor.
4.
4. Councillor Finlay.
4.
4. Councillor Beattie. 4. Mayor Smith. 4. Councillor Bowen. 4.
So that's 3 against and 11 for, with 1 abstention, Sarah. Right, moving on to 4 and 5. Can we have those together? Yeah. You're happy with the voice? All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against?
Abstain.
Any abstentions? Okay, we're all good on that. Can we move to item number 9? Thanks, Kathy. Page 89.
With your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like Aaron Phillips to join me at the table as this Linklater block is certainly his baby.
And we're going to take your report as read.
Thank
and
you.
just if you can just add anything that is new that hasn't been added since you've written the report.
No, there's nothing new to add.
So we'll just take questions. Councillor Finlay.
Just on the map, are there going to be car up on Roberts Line?
At the moment, the LTP doesn't provide for any additional funding. There has been a desire to increase car parking. However, at the moment, the 2021 year completes the development plan as you have in front of you. So in a nutshell, you haven't given us an instruction or funding to develop a car park.
Okay. But car parks could be developed up there at a later stage?
Yes, certainly right across the park or the reserve, we could do future developments, whether they be demand related or levels of service related improvements.
Okay. Thank you.
That was my question. It's a level of service question, really, isn't it?
Judging by the car park that's recently been opened, we're probably starting to look with the usage of the Linklater that it will probably be a demand related thing.
Okay.
Just further on from that, the reason I asked that, we're now, the bottom area is getting more and more built up in dog on lead area. So for a lot of the people who take their dogs off lead would be looking at a car park up top, would they not? So they can access that dog off lead area straight away.
So we've had discussions about this, and one of the problems with the dog off the lead area, and it came up when you were talking about the policies around dogs off the lead across all of our reserves, is that the dogs off the lead pass through areas where playgrounds are, children playing in the barbecue area. So it's more that conflict. So whilst we've pushed more of the active dog activity to the back of the park, there are still dogs being exercised in the lower area as well. So they're quite different usages and different dog owners and different purposes. So I don't think it would be fair to say that, you know, the car park up the top would be used by dog owners. I think it would be used by people who want to use the different range of facilities that are available at that end of the reserve.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might have missed it in the report, but have we got figures of actual numbers going through?
No, we haven't, but we've installed a counter at the main gate last week. We spent a little bit of time standing there trying to work out what gate to put the counter on. As you might be aware, there's 4 different gates in that front fence. They're fairly evenly used, and so we're going to have to do a little exercise of assessing the proportion of people we're using each gate and then extrapolating the number, but a counter went in last week.
So we don't have the ability to put a counter on each gate?
We could, but they're not cheap. They're $3,000 to $5,000 each. So.
Okay. And then just a additional question, which isn't strictly on this report, but do we have an update on the swings? Because I saw in the weekend that there is the basket swing again and a regular swing, but obviously it's not the original.
No, that we replaced them quickly with some we had in stock and that had come out of other places, but I've forgotten what it's called, that the special swing with for the infant in front is called, but we have to order a new one of those.
So we never located them then?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just a very, I think it's just me not understanding what's meant, but a 7.5 suggestions for improvement or criticisms from the play policy research included. Then that first bullet point, fully fenced are for dogs not ready to be off leash. I didn't know what that meant. Fully fenced areas, fully fenced playgrounds, fully fenced what?
That's a typo on my part.
Okay.
I apologise. I think I'm missing an A.
You're missing an A.
A from R.
Area.
Ah, area. Thank you.
Or in my defence, it may have been a typo from the submission. I might have cut and paste. I'll use that one.
Right. So you were saying, that an additional thing we might need is a fully fenced area for dogs who are not ready to be off leash.
Yes, that's correct. So that came through again during the work down at Ahe Mate and during the review of the animal bylaw, that people were talking about that not everybody has a dog when they first start out with a dog that they can control, and an off the lead area for some dogs needs to be fenced.
And I suppose that does that link with feedback? I certainly get feedback, I'm sure council does, about that conflict that you were just referring to of dogs off leash. When there's a playground within the off leash area, dogs should be on leash even though it's an off leash area. It gets very complicated.
Teaching a dog to recall when it's young is quite a difficult task.
So this would help with that.
Yes, it would.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just following on from the feedback that we've had about having a fully fenced area for dogs at Linklater, some people will remember that that was the original proposed site for a fully fenced dog park, but we got objections from neighbours, I believe. So has anything changed in that situation that would allow us to do a fully fenced dog area at Linklater? Or because I feel like if the same neighbourly interactions are still there, then that is never going to be an option for us.
Yes, part of the there was a number of issues that constrained us doing a fully fenced dog area in the park, and this might be a reminder for some that originally we'd thought it might be in what we're calling the fourth block, and in the diagram that's got opening in 2020 of it. That had objections from neighbours. The advantage of that site is we thought we could get a car park next to it, so that those with the mobility issues and dogs had close access to the fenced off dog area. But also we had a change in the restrictions around the radar station for the Airways Corporation that sits in the upper middle corner of the block near where the words dog proof boundary fence sit. And that extended from 200 metres to 300 metres, which limits our ability to do metal structures in that part of the park. So where we ended up with for the fully fenced dog park was that the only place that we could do it that was unlikely to have issues with neighbours, unlikely to have issues with the airport radars, was in a space next to the words opening in 2018 on the existing diagram. That would have necessitated either a decision to have a very long driveway and car park to enable those with mobility issues to have good access to it, or you had to walk, say 500 to 600 metres to get to it. And the decision at that time was we'd much rather locate it at Ahimate where people could park right next to it, and it had an excellent environment for it down there.
But now the one at Ahimate has been such a success, and we've got parking next to it for those with mobility needs, maybe there is then an option in the future to consider a fenced area at Linklater in that opening in 2018 area?
Yeah, that is a possibility. We have a fairway for a disc golf course through there, but a little bit of juggling here and there, it might be achievable.
Okay, thank you.
From me, the survey that you did in 2018 showed 100% satisfaction. Do you have the number of people that you actually surveyed? On page 94.
No, sorry, we don't have that survey result in front of us. Only to say that those surveys that are undertaken are our annual park user surveys. They are taken through a company, and so that the sample is designed to represent users or the wider population. But I don't know the actual number of people surveyed.
So if it's an annual survey, what was the results in 2019?
So it's an annual park survey, but we don't survey every park in our network every year. So it may be that the Linklater wasn't surveyed in that year.
Okay, thanks for that. It looks like that's exhausted their questions. Thanks very much. I'll look to move that report. Seconded by Ian. Any comments? Thanks, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I'd just like to say what a fantastic development there has been over the last few years in Linklater Park, and how often I hear positive feedback about it from people in the community, both when I'm there and when I'm not there. And I think it's definitely met the needs of the community in that side of town, but it's also become a bit of a destination park that people drive to. Mm-hmm. And so I just like to congratulate those who've been involved in the development of it and say how pleased I am with it. And I think, most residents are too.
Councillor Denison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also echo those comments of Councillor Johnson. This was an idle piece of land when I first came to council, and there was debate whether to even start doing any investment into this piece of land. But to get to this point where we've done a multi-year master plan and invested it and seen the use and the profile that it attains and the wide and varied use that it enjoys is very pleasing. And relatively, it's been a relative small investment considering what else we're investing in the Esplanade, because it was always seen as an alternate to the northern side of the city to balance the Esplanade asset. And you can see with this small lead-in how many people have gone and flocked there. I agree, people travel in cars to get there. It's a destination asset. And the swing bridge and the Flying Fox are really appealing to not only the children, but I've seen adults enjoy photos and video clips on that asset. So well done, Aaron. I know it has been your baby. And I know that this last bit of work will tidy up, I guess, the completion of what we hope to achieve. But getting to this point and seeing the debates over the years is very, very pleasing to see such a fantastic result. Well done.
Councillor Finlay.
Very much along the same lines as Councillor Dennison. Every time I go up there, and I go up there quite regularly with my dog, or my daughter goes up it, the amount of people that talk to us, you know, who recognise I'm a councillor and want to congratulate the council on what they've done up there. It's phenomenal. I've never had one complaint. Well, one, because they thought there were too many dogs off leave, but that I put them in their place. But but it's a fantastic place to be. I came across a family of 4 or 5 young kids, and the mother was laughing, and their children call it the exploring park, because every time they go up there, they find new things or something new's been opened. And they live in Hokowhitu, so they go all the way over there to go to the exploring park. So it's a destination now. It's not just for the people in the Kelvin Grove area, it's for the people of the city. And I think people across our city are gaining from its use. And I think, Aaron, you need a pat on the back.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues might remember that over this last summer, I think, I hosted a visit for council from landscape architects from Boffa Miskel, who were involved in a piece of work designing a proposal for a destination playground out at Marton, and they wanted to see what the local competition was like. So I spent a day taking them around our destination parks. And so we went to Memorial, noting that work was on the books. We went to the Esplanade, which they loved. We went to Ahimate, and we went to Linklater, and they were particularly impressed with the work that's gone on at Linklater. And I think the log scramble had just opened at that point, and they particularly liked the emphasis on natural play that was coming through in the Linklater Reserve. So this it's an important park for our community. It's growing as a destination across the city, but it sits well in the regional and even national landscape for the way that play is developing. So well done, officers.
With that, no more comments. So we'll look to vote on the voice. So I'll look to move the recommendation first. So I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Meehan. All those in favour? Aye. And we'll look to our final item, which is the work schedule. And I'll look to the General Manager. Have you got any comments on the work schedule?
Not really, just happy to take questions on it. We've obviously got 3 weighty reports coming in October, which is good. The only addition to that, Manawatu Cricket are planning to come and present at the October committee. We'd look to augment their presentation with their closeout report on the work that we've done at Fitzherbert Park. Some really exciting good work there, and it'd be good to kind of showcase that alongside them. But pending questions.
No questions? Okay, I'll look to move the work schedule, seconded by Councillor Rutherford, and we'll look to move that recommendation. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right. Councillors, I think we're back here at just about 1:15.